So welcome back to Rideout MMA. Today we're going to be going over 5 counters for the lead hook. Let's get into it. Okay, so the counters that we're going to be going over today are all going to be in the context of both of our partners being in the same stance. So, right, we're both going to be orthodox, and that's kind of how we're going to be working through this. We're not going to be thinking about the orthodox southpaw, or rather open stance position when we're going to be doing these counters. So just to start, the first one's going to be the easiest, and then we're going to increase in difficulty as we go up. So make sure you check out the very last counter here, because it's pretty interesting and fun if you can get it. So first one, when Yazzie hits me with the left hook here, I want to also be loading myself for my follow-up counter, because what we're going to do, she hits me with the left hook, and I'm going to turn out with it with my own. Boom. So as I'm getting hit with that strike, I'm moving with it, but I'm still staying tight with my defense. I'm not opening up any holes, and I'm not telegraphing the fact that I'm going to be throwing this counter back. Because a lot of the time when people anticipate this counter, they don't necessarily make it a counter as they do just trying to throw something back, right? And what that kind of looks like is when you do your block and you sort of whip your arm open as you do it, because you're so over anticipating throwing that strike back. But instead, hide the fact that you want to throw it. So I do my block, boom, I'm loaded with my lead hand now to turn out with my own left hook. And it's also the easiest for our partners, or rather our opponents, to read off of us. Because Yazzie's not dumb, right? When she hits me with hers and I go to throw mine back, she should be ready to defend herself. Boom, right? Or even, right, a more advanced fighter would anticipate the fact me throwing that punch back and maybe hit me again. She rolls underneath it, boom, to set up her own counter. And this way, our opponent can sort of set us up and lead us into a trap. So just know that going forward, it's not going to be a counter for the higher level guys. Bish. 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 Okay, our next counter here, we're going to be going off of the same block. So I'm still going to be doing that classic answer the telephone hook block on the side of my head, but I'm going to be a little bit more creative in the way that I'm going to counter out of it. So instead of just moving with the strike when Yazzie hits me, I'm going to brace myself against it. Boom. This is best done if someone's sort of doing a slapping left hook, right? They're not really keeping the structure with the punch, and maybe they're just trying to set something else up. But I'm going to try to take advantage of all that space that Yazzie's opening up when she hits me with that left hook. So, right, when Yazzie hits me with that left hook, pose on it, boom, right? She's technically most open on this side. If I was going to do that counter that we just did a second ago, she again should be ready to defend herself. But if I do my block and I'm able to fire out of it, then I really should be able to take advantage of all that space that she's opening up on her punch. So the counter itself is, I go for my block, I'm loading against that strike, I stay tight, and I snap across out of it. So if we show that again in slow-mo, right, I block, and I fire right out of it. It's difficult to do. If she's hitting me as hard as she can, it's going to be really difficult to brace against that punch, and it's probably going to knock me, right, the opposite direction. Or rather, I should even be moving with it so I don't take that full impact. But this is in the context, she's sort of touching me with that lead hand. She touches, all right, and I fire right out of that block. So let's show that a couple times in slow-mo. Right, I block, boom, and fire. Again, I block and fire. Make sure that you don't block, then drop your hand and then try to punch. There's no way that you're going to be able to fit in the space of that punch. It has to be right out of your block on the side of your head. Fire from there. Okay, let's see that again. Slow-mo. 1, 2. 1, 2. Block, punch. All right, take a step with it. All right, and kind of close that distance a little bit more. Maybe get a little bit more power out of it. Next counter is going to be the classic rolling counter. I'm going to get underneath that punch and use all the momentum that I'm building up in that motion to come through with my power punch right afterwards. So when Yazzie's throwing her left hook at me, I move with it just for a moment, right? I don't want to just drop straight away. So she throws her left hook, right? I move with it just for a moment. I'm kind of flowing with that motion, and that's going to start building all of that momentum into my strike. And you can see the way I'm loading up my right hook as I come through. This is an extremely circular motion, right? We don't want to feel any break in the rhythm whatsoever. As I'm rolling through, you can see myself load my shoulders up so I can flow directly into my right hook, right? Or I can flow into my cross. It shouldn't feel like you're just doing a loop and then you try to punch out of it. Again, that's too slow. It's going to give her more space to protect herself. So again, in slow motion to counter with my right hook off of her left, as I go underneath, boom, I'm flowing right up into my right hook, over top of her hand, hopefully. And when someone's really committing on that left hook too, their body will follow through. Maybe they lose a little bit of balance, but they're not going to be in their best defensive position, and that's for sure. So again, all right, she rolls. All right, and I come right underneath with it. Again. Good. I teach in the context of kickboxing and MMA, right? This is a very boxing counter, but if you're going to do it in those sports, make sure you're not throwing your face down on your roll for obvious reasons. You get hit in the face with a leg, right? Keep your head up as best as you can. Use your body, and make sure you keep an eye on that target the entire time. So again, slow motion, roll, fish, right? Great opportunity to take an angle as well. Again, fish, 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 fish. Our next counter is getting even more advanced, okay? This one's called the 180, right? I'm gonna be stepping right past my opponent, pivoting so I'm almost directly behind them, and then following up with my counter. So when we're hitting this one, it again has to happen when our opponent is committing to their strike. It's very hard to do if someone's just probing or touching with their lead hand, and we have to remember that context in mind for which counters that we wanna get hit, and so we don't get countered in our counter, right? They'll lead us into something, hoping that we do something dramatic and land that big shot on us. So when someone's really committing on that left hook, right? So she's even lunging at me, she's stepping, she's doing a big motion to set up that power strike. I'm gonna step directly behind her. So just pose on your left hook for me, right? I'm gonna hinge forward and step directly behind her. Okay, so we're almost butt to butt, leg to leg. And you can see where my front foot is now, right behind her lead. Right, this is gonna kind of lock her in place and hold her there for a second as I do my pivot. Right, now you can see I'm right behind her. From this position, I get a frame on the back of her shoulder or on the back of her arm. In this position, you have a good second or two to control your partner. Right? The initial reaction usually, as a general grappling concept, when you push somebody, they push back. So if Yazzie was to push me from behind, I'm not just gonna fall forward unless I'm completely caught off guard. Usually the initial reaction when they push, is to fight against it. And this is going to kind of help you in this situation. They're going to hold themselves against your hand. Just make sure you're braced and you're still driving against them, but not to the point where you yourself are going to fall over. So again, she goes slow motion for me. She throws that left hook. I hinge forward, get right behind, and now I have that right hand frame. I have that right hand frame directly behind her shoulder or her elbow. All right, basically above her elbow, and I'm safe because she tries to turn back. I have that block. And that kind of helps me out because it's going to set me up for my left hook now. Right on her, okay? Or I can go body. Boom. All right, sink it into her gut. So we go slow motion. She goes left hook. I step, hinge, frame, and then I hook from behind. All right, the hand that you frame with is really important here too. So again, she goes left hook on me. I step behind. I pivot all the way around, and I'm framing with my right hand behind her shoulder. If I was to frame with my left in this scenario, my free hand to strike is sort of jammed up, right? I can only really strike illegal areas, right? Her back of the head. It's going to be really hard to try to find a clean shot on her head or her body with my right hand from this position. But if I'm framing with my right hand and I'm setting up that left hand, I have so many targets to strike with it. Boom, all right? You don't want to make it a hockey fight, right? Let's do it in real time. All right, she throws left hook. All right, don't make it a hockey fight where you're just holding them and trying to hit, right? Control with your frame, release the frame as you come in with your hook. So it's 1, 2. All right, 1, 2. Same as you would do with any other strike. Again. Again. Right. So you can see how I could be easily setting up those shots when I have that behind her back angle, right? I'm controlling her for a moment, or I'm walking her like I'm a police officer. I even like saying steering, right? I'm steering her around to set up that shot. This one's also really good, not to get into too many details, if you're trapped against the wall, right? So common. When you have somebody attacking you up against the wall or against the ropes, they throw a jab cross hook. All right, that's your opportunity to escape. All right, you lead yourself out, boom, and you pivot behind them, putting them in that defensive position. Okay, last counter here, we're going to be doing the pull counter, or what I prefer to call it, the lean. All right, I kind of put the pull in a little bit of a different category just to differentiate it. All right, so for me, the lean counter, if Yasmin was to throw her left hook at me, I take a little step back with my lead foot and I sit on top of it. Right, try not to break your back to do this technique. I could do a whole video just on this and all the mistakes that people make trying to do this counter and how beginners rely on it too much. But if you're going to do this style of counter, which isn't my favorite because it teaches a lot of bad habits, right, is to step back with your rear foot and sink into that leg. All right, if she was to step in on it, right, I got to make sure that my hands are still up. But if she's, staying in place, or if I really know my range, right, I hope that, right, it guides right past my face. And I don't want to really go so far back where I can't set up a counter now. So, right, I take a little step back and I sit on that leg. So now I'm spring loaded to fire back with either hand. Right, my jab, right, so I can drive myself into my jab, or my cross. Okay, either straight punch. So if I'm going to fire back with my cross, right, I step, sit, and I drive myself into that cross. Again, I step, right, and drive myself in. Again, just like that. Right, or if I want to fire back with my jab, right, launching myself back in. Right, there's some very specific opportunities where you can get some really clean counters out of it, but in general, it can't be your go-to every single time. Or even worse, if she ends up attacking to my body afterwards, she throws that left hook and goes cross to the body, it's going to be really hard to find a place to defend myself here, and I'm really lining myself up nicely to get hit with that. Similarly to this counter, I can drive away with my feet. So instead of just stepping my back foot away, when she throws that hook, I give a little push with my lead foot. So again, I'm right over top of my feet. I'm not leaning away. I'm not off balance. I'm based in my legs. So I can set up whatever I want to throw back. So if she throws that left hook, I push off with my lead foot and then drive myself back in with a jab or a cross or a jab cross. So again, slow-mo, I push, and I launch myself back in. Same issues all present in this case, right? If you do this too much, she could faint, right? And I pull myself out. She throws some sort of fake. I pull myself out. And when I think that I'm safe to go back in, she's ready to, right, launch that cross or whatever punch she really wants into my face. So just be very careful when you're using this technique. But if you're advanced and high level, this is a great one to do. It's super quick. It's agile. It's going to land your best shot. Ish. 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 Okay, a bonus one for you here. We're going to be going over our intercept counters. These counters are basically taking advantage of the space soon as our opponents are throwing at us. When Yazzy's lunging in on that left hook, I'm going to go for my check hook. And it has to happen in unison of when they're trying to attack us. Right, there's lots of different ways we can do intercept counters, but it just has to happen just as they're opening up with their strike. So when they think they're landing theirs, we're going to be landing ours. So the footwork for this is sort of the hardest part. And again, we need our opponent to be committing on their strike. If they're not actually committed to land that punch, it's going to be very hard to take advantage of the space that they're opening up. When a lot of fighters throw their left hooks, they tend to drop their right hand, especially when they're committing in with power. So they'll lunge in and go boom, right? You see it all the time happen at every level, and then they're caught exactly with this counter. So when Yazzie lunges in with her left hook, I step out, yep, slow-mo, right? I step out with my lead, boom, and I land my own. So I'm moving out of the space that she's throwing at me. You're not going to be able to paddle. You just got to block like this, all right? When she throws that left hook at me, she drops that hand, and I'm going to be stepping out and filling the space that I was in with my own punch. So you got to get a little bit matrixy with it. I even like using a line on the mat, just like right in front of me here. I step down the line. As my foot steps, it's already turned in, and my shoulders and hips are aligned with it. So if you see me here, right, this is our check hook, boom. All right, I'm stepping out as my hook fills that space. And then I can take one more step behind me to have this really great angle on my opponent. So if we go slow-mo, right, slow-mo, boom, all right, I step out, all right, with my lead foot, all right, lead punch is landing, or lead hook is landing at the exact same time, and then one more step behind me to have this great angle now. Exactly, so you go, just like that. But worth trying if someone is that big brawler, they're reaching with their hooks, they keep trying to catch up to you and land that power punch every time, go for this counter and they're going to run right into yours. And they're really not going to see it coming. They're going to be totally fixated on landing the punch on you. Again, all right. All right, don't lunge in this time, just throw it right where you're at. All right. Just like that. Again. All right, is that okay? Okay. Simple follow. Okay guys, thank you so much for watching. If you have your own counters that you like to hit off the left hook, leave them in the comments below. If you think I'm right, if you think I'm wrong, I want to hear all of it. I want to be the type of coach to learn from you guys too. So let me know the types of counters that you like to do off of your opponent's left hooks. Anyways, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave that comment. We'll see you next time.